Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, the latest update on Bills safety Damar Hamlin, the support he's receiving around the league and sports world in general. Plus, the NFL is deciding on Week 18 as the Raiders start preparing for their season finale versus the Chiefs. What I think needs to happen, your calls and texts will close out the show. It's all coming up on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, January 4th, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen each and every day. Remember, you can find the Locked On Raider podcast free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Thanks to my man Ari, who's doing a fantastic job each and every day, putting up with my crazy schedule, and also making sure we're up on YouTube each and every day. Again, at Ari Produces on Twitter is where you can find him if you ever want to shout him out. Give him a little tip or two or a note or whatever, or little feedback on the YouTube page. We do appreciate that. We're over 3,000 subscribers, so we definitely thank you for that. Today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast is being brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. It's a game that, you get to become an NFL GM, and if you ever dreamed of doing that, you can do it in this game. It's definitely for you. If you want to download the game, just go to ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the App Store. All listeners of the Locked On Raiders podcast get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. That's all caps in the game. Again, Ultimate Football GM. I'll tell you a lot more about them later on in the show, but let's go ahead and get into it. We got a loaded show for today, and off top, got a lot of great positive feedback on Tuesday's show where I dedicated the whole thing to Bills safety Damar Hamlin, and I'll be 100% honest with you, didn't know how it was going to go over. Didn't know if everyone was going to appreciate it. Didn't know if anyone was going to appreciate it. And I'm sure there's some people that didn't like it, but for the majority of the people I got feedback from, everyone was really feeling the episode, and I definitely appreciate that. And I'm glad that you understood why I wanted to dedicate that show to Damar Hamlin. And he continues to be a massive story in the NFL, massive story in sports. I did my radio show on Raider Nation Radio 920, and almost all 3 hours of it was dedicated to Damar Hamlin. In one shape or form. I had multiple players, from former wide receiver Bryce Butler on the show, Lincoln Kennedy, who really got emotional when I had him on the show talking about it, John McClain from Sports Gallery, from GallerySports.com and Sports Radio 610 in Houston. Very long time guy who covers the NFL. Got a lot of respect for John McClain. He was talking about, everyone had their angle, which they talked about what was going on with Damar Hamlin. Wanted to give you somewhat of an update. This comes from the Buffalo Bills. They tweeted out Damar Hamlin spent last night in the intensive care unit, remains there today in critical condition at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center. We're grateful and thankful for the outpouring of support we have received thus far. And that was the tweet that they put out on Tuesday, just after midnight, as a matter of fact. And really, it's a slow drip process when it comes to the updates on him. And a lot of that is because of the cooling process that his body is going through right now. As I found out when I was doing ESPN radio, I was filling in on Freddie and Fitzsimmons. Myself and Courtney Cronin did the show, and we did 4 hours of basically all Damar Hamlin. So I think I did about 7 hours plus a podcast on Damar Hamlin on Tuesday. And really, I had no problem doing that because that's how serious it was. But the information that we find out about him, how he's doing as far as health-wise, it's going to be a very slow drip process. So as soon as I get more information, of course, I'll pass it along. It's not one of those things where it's like, okay, you talk about it one day and then you forget about it, because it is serious. So right now, not a whole lot of news to update, but it's just, it's one of those continuous situations that we'll continue to monitor. Every team across the league, they changed their Twitter handle, or they're not their handle, but their profile picture, their avatar, whatever you want to call it on Twitter, to be Hamlin. It was like a jersey, a Bills jersey with the number 3, and says praying for Hamlin. Thought that was cool. The Raiders are included in that. And Mark Davis also put out a statement on the Raiders Twitter account saying, our Raider family and the entire Raider Nation extend our prayers and support to Damar Hamlin and his family following last night's devastating tragedy. This moment has united fans from each and every corner of the globe as we send our love and support to Damar. Our alumni, coaches, players, and staff support you, Damar. Raider Nation stands with you, your family, the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, and all those affected during this difficult time. That's from Raiders owner Mark Davis, put out there on Twitter. And also the Raiders canceled their coordinators meetings with the media on Tuesday, and multiple teams across the league, probably a good handful of teams, did that as well. I know the Steelers, they actually spoke to the media. Mike Tomlin, it was very personal for him because he's in Pittsburgh, and Damar Hamlin is from Pittsburgh, so he called him a Pittsburgher. He went to, Pitt, the University of Pitt. He went to high school there in Pittsburgh, so it was very personal for head coach Mike Tomlin with the Steelers. And actually had an opportunity to talk to Chris Carter, host of Locked On Steelers, who was on this podcast just a couple weeks ago on the crossover edition, preparing for the Raiders and Steelers on Christmas Eve. And he covered Damar. So I actually had him on my radio show on Tuesday, and I'll bring that conversation to this podcast, maybe on Friday, just to give you a little bit of insight to who Damar Hamlin was and what he means to the Pittsburgh community. I thought that was a really good conversation with Chris. So we'll bring that to the table maybe on Friday, depending on what the situation is, if there's any more updates that come from it. But the Raiders are preparing for an upcoming game. Of course, it's on Saturday, week 18 versus the Chiefs, season finale. Then they'll have their exit interviews, and the season will be over, and we'll be into the offseason. And that's when everything gets real, interesting, to say the least. And so the Raiders put out an injury report on Tuesday, since they do have a game on Saturday as of right now. And, it was kind of lengthy. It really was. Wide receiver Devontae Adams was dealing with the illness, so he was limited on Tuesday. Josh Jacobs, dealing with the hip and oblique injury, was limited. Quarterback Jarrett Stidham, right elbow injury, limited. Guys who participated fully, linebacker Curtis Bolton, dealing with the shin injury, he was a full participant, and running back Zamir White with the ankle, full participant. So I don't know if Josh Jacobs is going to take part in the game on Saturday, but Zamir White, being a full participant in practice on Tuesday, looks like he is on schedule to play in the season finale. And maybe they hold Josh Jacobs, or maybe they limit him to the amount of snaps that he gets, if he does get some snaps. So that's interesting development. We'll continue to monitor that as far as the injury report goes throughout the course of the week. Also, punter AJ Cole was dealing with the illness and was limited, and linebacker Darian Butler with a concussion did not participate. So Devontae Adams with the illness and AJ Cole with the illness kind of reminds me of the week leading into the Saints game, when there was multiple Raiders that were on the illness, had an illness, and they just went out there and they were very flat, never got past the 50-yard line until super late in the game. That was kind of, I don't know what it's going to be like. Devontae Adams is supposed to talk to the media today. They'll have an open locker room today as well. Head coach Josh McDaniels will talk to the media around 11 a.m. Pacific time this morning, so that'll be something. But when I see illness and guys limited, I get a little bit concerned. As far as the Chiefs go and their Tuesday injury report, Sky Moore did not participate. He's dealing with a hand injury, and cornerback L'Jarius Sneed is with a hip injury, did not participate. Guard Joe Thuney with the ankle injury was limited, and linebacker Nick Bolton with the rib injury was a full participant. So that's all I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Kind of news and notes of the day as it regards to what's going on with not only Damar Hamlin, the safety from the Bills, but also the Silver and Black as they prepare for Saturday's game. Speaking of Saturday's game in week 18 in the NFL, want to talk about that and what I think the NFL needs to do with these games, including Saturday's game. Raiders and the Chiefs will do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor, Ultimate Football GM. And this is pretty exciting. It really is. And why it's exciting is because all offseason long, every offseason, I don't know why I didn't come up with this idea for a video game. I mean, not that I would have been able to put it together, but I don't know why I didn't come up with the idea, because we do it every single offseason. We act like the Ultimate Football GM, right? We talk about the draft. We talk about free agency. We talk about coaches, coordinators, what this guy needs to do, what that guy needs to do, who should be brought in, who shouldn't be brought in. Well, that's exactly what you do in this game, the Ultimate Football GM. It's challenging. It's a lot of fun. It's very realistic. You hire coaches, trade players, make draft picks, navigate your franchise through a whole season. You do a whole lot, and it's a lot of fun, so you should be a part of it. All Locked On Raider podcast listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when they use the promo code Locked On. It's all caps in the game store. It's Locked On, all caps in the game store. Make sure you check it out today. And if you want to download the game, again, ultimate-gm.com. Look it up on the App Store, ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to talk about Week 18 in the NFL, as today is Wednesday. So you know what that means. Just like we do here on the podcast, we always start to turn the page to the next opponent up on the schedule for the Silver and Black. Well, the whole NFL does that. They had an off day for all the players on Tuesday. As I mentioned before, the coordinators were canceled. Head coach Josh McDaniels, we will talk to him today, and the locker room will be open today. But as I look at it, I start to think, if I'm the Buffalo Bills, if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals, and to be honest, if I'm any team in the NFL, do I want to be out there practicing today, tomorrow, Friday? If I'm in the Raiders position, do I want to play on Saturday? Probably not, right? I mean, that's their brother and Damar Hamlin. I mean, with you, when you're an NFL player, that is a small fraternity. You're the best of the best of the best. At some point, you were the baddest dude in your locker room, and you made it to the highest level. No matter what team these guys are on, and we see it all the time. I mean, after these games are over, no matter what team these guys are on, they all meet on the field. They all shake hands for the most part, exchange jerseys. I mean, they are all one big fraternity. And so they have their brother down right now in Damar Hamlin in the Cincinnati hospital as he's in critical condition, right? And of course, all prayers and thoughts are with him and his family. But if you're the Buffalo Bills, think about that. How do you go out there and practice? The NFL put out a statement on Tuesday talking about the Bills Bengals game and also an update on week 18. And this is what the statement had to say. The NFL continues to be in regular contact with the medical team caring for Damar Hamlin and also the Bills and Bengals organizations and NFLPA Players Association. After speaking with both teams and NFLPA leadership, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell informed the clubs today that the Bills Bengal game will not be resumed this week. The NFL has made no decisions regarding the possible resumption of the game at a later date. The league has not made any changes to the Week 18 regular season schedule. We'll continue to provide additional information as it becomes available. So what they're saying is there's a chance that the show will go on this week. And that's where I have a problem. Not with the show going on, because we all know at some point the show will go on. But if I learned anything from the pandemic, if I learned anything from 2020, that COVID year, is that the NFL, just because the schedule says it's got to be played on Saturday or Sunday, doesn't mean it necessarily has to be played on Saturday or Sunday. That COVID year, we found out there was games played every single day of the week. Monday through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there was a game played every single day during the COVID year, which lets me know that things can happen. I'm not saying, don't play the games at all. I'm not saying cancel the season. I'm not saying any of that. I've heard people say that. That's not what I'm proposing. What I'm talking about is I think the responsible thing for the NFL to do for the first time in a very long time, because they've had other opportunities where they just need to get out in front of things and realize and make it understandable for the general public, for people like me, everyday Joes, people like you, everyday Joes, that it's not always just about the almighty dollar. It's not all about just the money and the revenue, but it's also about life. Like we talked about on Tuesday's podcast, it's more than just a game, right? This is life and death that we're talking about right now. I think for the NFL, the smart thing to do would just be press pause. Just press pause. With it being an 18-week season, 17 games, and the way that the playoffs are set up and the Super Bowl set up, it's built in where they can just simply push everything back a week. Give these guys an opportunity to sit down with their family. Can you imagine being a Buffalo Bill and being in that locker room today, and your head coach, Sean McDermott, comes in and says, all right, guys, we're going to get out on the field today and make it happen. The Raiders have a walkthrough today. And it's closed to the public. So I'm sure they're probably not going to do too much of anything. But could you imagine being in that Bills locker room and all of a sudden you're wondering what's going on with your brother who is in the Cincinnati hospital, and you're being expected to go out there and practice and get ready for a game on Sunday against the Patriots? I couldn't imagine it. And look, I've done some things. I feel like I'm pretty strong-minded. I've done radio shows after I was at my lowest point with, tragedy that hit my own life. But, that's kind of what I do, is bury myself in work where I don't have to worry about what's going on. And maybe that's what these players would want to do. The only difference is when I bury myself in work, I'm sitting behind a microphone like I am right now talking. That's one thing. These guys are out on the football field. And if for any point they're not 100% on point and focus in on what they're supposed to be doing, that's when injuries occur. That's when the worst happens, when your technique and fundamentals are compromised a little bit. Then all of a sudden something bad can happen. And I don't wish that on anybody, as you very well know. It is way more bigger than a game. To me, it's life, and life is a big deal, right? I mean, so the game, it doesn't really mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. And of course, the playoffs are going to come up. Teams are going to compete for a championship. Someone's going to hoist the Lombardi at the end of the year, and that's that's the fun in the game, and that's the sport. But the games don't need to be played this week. If they decided that the Raiders don't need to play on Saturday against the Chiefs, that'd be fine. Look, I'll tell you right now, Kirk Morrison said it, and I quoted it on the episode Tuesday, that it would be okay. You know, it would be hard for him if he was about to participate in the game, if he was an active player and had to play in a game that didn't mean anything. It would be hard for him to even get out there. And look, the Raiders aren't playing for anything. We know that Saturday is their final game. The Chiefs, I get it. They're playing for something. They're going to go into the playoffs, make a deep run. They're looking for seeding. So I get that. And I realize you can't just go and cancel games that don't matter, right? As convenient as it sounds, I know there's a lot of logistics that go into it. There's a lot of revenue that'll be lost. There's a lot of fans that have spent money on this, that, and the other. I mean, there's way too much to go into it to just be like, all right, if the games don't matter, if they don't play for seeding, then we'll just go ahead and call it a wrap. Now, that's not what I'm asking. Again, I just think that pushing it back, just taking a pause and saying, you know what, we love the NFL, we love sports, but let's take a step back, because these teams, in particular the Bills and Bengals, need a chance to heal. They need a chance to think that, you know what, we got to find out what's going on with our brother. Look, nobody knows. Today's Wednesday. What if something takes a turn for the worse on Friday? What if they don't know anything by Friday, Saturday, Sunday when it's time for them to take a field? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, to me, that's just asking a whole lot of these guys. That, I mean, that's a brotherhood. These guys are with each other, and some of them are tighter with their teammates than they are with their own families. And that's their guy. I mean, I've seen guys like Deion Dawkins, Stephon Diggs, and many others from the Buffalo Bills just really, speaking on it, going through it, talking about all the, just what's been going on in their mind since everything happened on Monday. It's one of those scenarios. And I did Freddie and Fitzsimmons on ESPN Radio on Tuesday night, and Courtney Cronin, who covers the Bears, for ESPN, was just saying that as well. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And since they do have that extra week in the playoffs, they could just push everything back, and then they would have football from the minute that they start back up all the way through the Super Bowl. There's nothing wrong with that. They could do that. Matter of fact, most coaches prefer that anyway. So I just hope that the NFL, and I'm not saying that they're not going to. They said in that statement, as I read it out, the league has not made any changes to the Week 18 regular season schedule. We'll continue to provide additional information as it becomes available. So they're not saying that it's set in stone that they're going to play this weekend. I hope they decide not to, but they just haven't come to a conclusion yet. They've had plenty of opportunities, like I said, in the past, to just make a decision to say, yeah, we could just push this game for a while. And we saw what they did in the COVID year, so they can't say it's impossible, right? I mean, there's things that can happen, and everything could be paused for a week and then resumed, and it will be okay. We'll see what decision they ultimately make. We know it's very difficult to do some things like this at times, but at the same time, I think that they can get it done. So that's what I got. That's my suggestion, and that's what I'm hoping for. Matter of fact, more than a suggestion, that's what I'm hoping the league does and chooses to do. Week 18 of this NFL season starting on Saturday as the Raiders take on the Chiefs. We can wait another week, right? We can wait another week before that game takes place, and give everyone an opportunity to sit home, spend some time with their family, talk to their loved ones, and, make decisions for themselves on what they want moving forward. Even Devontae Adams, he put out a tweet that was talking about how difficult it was for him to even sleep, just thinking about Damar Hamlin. Matter of fact, his exact tweet was, let me get to it real quick. He says, had hard to sleep last night thinking about Hamlin Island. That's Damar Hamlin's Twitter. I pray you shake back, bro. Football is a game that has zero importance in comparison to that man's health. God, please protect him. Again, that's Devontae Adams on Twitter. And I think that just really kind of puts everything into perspective as much as it needs to be. But your calls and texts are going to come up next, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, I do want to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post company and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job applications, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start off with a text from Raider Eddie in Denver. He says, "Hey, Q, thanks for being real and authentic on today's Tuesday podcast. One of my favorite things about this show is that you remind us about having perspective and that there are things that are bigger than football. With that said, like the rest of Raider Nation, my thoughts and prayers are with Damar Hamlin and his family. We have a lot of time to get back to football. Thanks, Raider Eddie in Denver." And thank you so much. And that's some of the positive feedback that I got on the show. And again, I did the show because I thought it was important. I didn't do the show because I wanted, a bunch of praise or whatever. I just thought it was important. And I'm glad that a lot of Raider Nation felt it was important as well. So Raider Eddie, thank you so much for that text. I appreciate you. Let's keep the party moving. Raider 916, he's up next. He's calling to talk about Tuesday's show as well. Dedicated to Damar Hamlin, what he felt about it, and shared his thoughts on the Raiders as well. Here he is, Raider 916.
Q, this is Raider 916, man. I haven't called in a while. Regarding your message, your show today with Damar Hamlin, man, I loved it. I love that you took time out to speak about life and the importance of a human being's life, people. As you mentioned, NFL players are people at the end of the day. They have their fathers, their brothers, their sisters, their sons, their husbands, boyfriends. They play a lot of different roles in people's lives, people that really, really care about them. And at the end of the day, that's who they go home to. And the fact that you can speak to this linebacker, or I believe it was a linebacker, Damar Hamilton, the fact that you could speak about the seriousness of him, and prayers go out to him and his family, I think just speaks volumes to you as a person and who you are, just as a professional and a person. And I'm glad to have you represent our team. It's not about football at the end of the day. It's about somebody's life. And I appreciate your show. I haven't called in lately. Haven't talked to you in a while. Talked to Raider Nation in a while because I just, I had to take a break for a minute, man. I got tired of the Raiders losing so much and then winning. I just always forget to call because of life. You know what I mean? And I try not to put football, even though it's fun to watch, and even though I love the Raiders, I try not to put them in front of my own life. So, and there's times that I have, and I just kind of catch myself being more of a fan than anything else. Even though it's nice, I've got to stop and take care of my own family. So I can appreciate the show that you put out there. And thank you, man. Thank you for bringing it to the perspective. So much love for you and Raider Nation. Love you guys. And, we'll just finish the season out strong. And just real quick, I thought we did a real excellent job against those 49ers. And, we'll talk about that another time. But as you mentioned today, it's about life and about somebody's life. So our prayers out to the Hamilton family and what they're going through. And idea, I want to talk to Locked On Bills, man, get some fan perspective from the Bills side. What he means to the team and just an idea. So do a crossover with the Bills, even though we're not playing them. It might be a good segue to put on there. So just throwing that out there. I don't know if we want to hear it, but I'd be open to it. All right. Bye.
Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate you. Thanks for the kind words on the show. And that's the thing, man. I make sure now not to allow a team to put me in a bad place like I used to. I used to be the angriest dude in the world when the Raiders lost. I didn't want to watch SportsCenter. I didn't want to turn TV on. Didn't want to talk to anyone. It's just like, leave me alone. And it's just not a way to live. As far as I'm concerned, it's just not the way to live. Now, I know everyone's not built like that. Everyone, doesn't deal with losses like that. And a lot of people are just going to take it a lot more personal. Doesn't mean that I'm not a fan, because I am. But I just realized at the end of the day, it's a game. Those guys in the locker room, I know it means a ton to them. But if they're able to leave that locker room, clear their mind, and go home to their family and not be the biggest jerk in the world, then I feel like I can as well. Saying I have nothing, it's not going to change any difference for me. So, and the people around me actually deserve that probably more than anything. So thank you so much for that call. Appreciate you. Next up, got a text from Raider M. Says, "Hey, Q, love your Locked On Raider podcast. And yesterday's show about Damar Hamlin brought me to tears. I love this sport and tried unsuccessfully to convince my husband that it's not about whether anyone knew football is a dangerous sport. That man's life means more than a game. The situation really puts some things in perspective. I don't really feel concerned about who the quarterback is next year anymore. I hope Damar Hamlin is okay." Raider M. And yeah, thank you, Raider M. I appreciate that. And you can't say it any better, right? I mean, we have people that are arguing about the quarterback, and this ain't fair. This is fair. This guy, that guy. We have, different people on TV, talking about and saying how the Raiders did this and they did that. And at the end of the day, man, does any of that really matter? No, it really doesn't when you put things into perspective like you're mentioning. Damar Hamlin's in the hospital fighting for his life. That's what matters. Fighting for his life with his family by his side. Only can imagine what they're going through as they, as much as we want updates, I want updates. I keep checking Twitter. So one time I'm saying that Twitter is not a cesspool because I'm looking for updates. Well, as much as I want updates, his family right there at the hospital, they want updates. So thank you, Raider Am. I appreciate your text. Up next, got a call from yours truly in Ohio. Quick call. Called in about 20 minutes into Tuesday's show just to give a few words. Here he is, yours truly in Ohio.
Hey, Q, yours truly here in Ohio. Just wanted to say, let's just listen to the podcast about 20 minutes into it, and I stopped it. Just had to say, I appreciate everything you do. Life is short. Don't take anything for granted. And, again, we all appreciate what you do, man. Take it easy. Love from your family. And, let's go Raiders.
Thank you so much for that call. Appreciate you. Got a lot of positive feedback on the show, as I mentioned. And I think it's important, man. Sometimes you've got to just take a step back and say, hey, I can do this every single day. I can talk Raider football in my sleep. I don't have to really have anything. I can just mail in a show if I wanted to. One, it's not my style. But two, sometimes you do have to put things in perspective and realize that, you know what, there's plenty of time for that. Let's do this right now because this is what really matters. Man, I was out and, had dinner with family and friends on Monday night, after everything had gone down, and I couldn't even really eat. I was eating, don't get me wrong, but it was hard for me to focus on eating and what was going on with them because all I kept doing was checking Twitter on updates, wanted to know what was going on with Damar Hamlin. So, everyone, if you didn't know his name before, you know it now. That's for sure. Up next, we got a text from Raiders fan in San Diego. It says, hey, Q, hope you had a great holiday season. I'd just like to throw this idea out there. Call the Bengals and Bills game a tie. Whatever happens after that happens. The only thing that matters is Damar Hamlin. I hope he makes a full recovery and lives his best life for as long as possible. As always, Raider Nation for life. Signed, Raiders fan in San Diego. And I've heard that call the game a tie as well. I know it has playoff implications, so it's always tough. But, again, at this point, the playoff implications to me don't really mean a whole lot, right? And that's not, fair to the Bills. And I'm sure that they want to go out there and play and do everything that they can for Damar and do it for Damar. I get it. But, it's just so tough to say, hey, guys, get back out there and play another game. So it might end up coming down to your idea. Call the game a tie, and then whatever happens after that happens. Thank you so much for that text. I appreciate you. Just got time for a couple more. We'll take a call from Iowa Raider. He's calling to talk about Tuesday's show and shares his thoughts on what he saw Monday night with Damar Hamlin. Here he is, Iowa Raider.
Thank you. This is Iowa Raider. I just got done listening to your podcast that you made for Tuesday. First and foremost, obviously, prayers go out to Damar Hamlin, his family, his teammates, everybody that was there and with him at the time of that accident. It was devastating to watch and to witness live. I don't know how anybody could be normal after an incident like that. So it was wild. Never seen anything like that in the sport of football. Obviously, hopefully he makes a full recovery, but it's just too early to speculate to know what potentially could have happened and what kind of state he's in. So I appreciate your podcast that you put out. Obviously Raider football is on the back of everybody's mind. Football in general is on the back of everybody's mind, but I tuned into your podcast because I knew you were going to talk about Damar and give us a little bit of a different perspective of what we should be thinking about. So I appreciate that. It means a lot. It over the years of listening to your podcast, I don't remember when I've been listening to your podcast for years. About 4 or 5 years, and it seems like you always kind of bring things back to kind of where they should be. If I'm way out in left field on a take or on a situation, I can listen to your podcast, and you bring me back to home plate, which is nice. And it's weird that you bring up take care of your family, love on your family. Sunday was one of the first times that I didn't follow the Raiders game like at all. Usually I have it up on my phone or I'm checking in updates, scores, things like that. But Sunday I took time to be with my family. We just hung out, didn't do anything special, and it was is one of the first times that I really haven't checked in on Raiders football, religiously on a Sunday when they're playing. So it was nice. Obviously everybody gets tangled up as the season wears on, and sometimes the health of players or the reality of how dangerous this sport is just gets lost in the tangled mess that we submerge ourselves in. So this is shocking. It's crushing reality of where we're at, in the state of football and how dangerous this sport really is. And hopefully Damar makes a recovery. It's too early to speculate, but I appreciate your podcast. I appreciate you coming out and saying that.
Thank you so much for the call, my man. I appreciate you. Thanks for the feedback. Glad to know I can help put things in perspective at times. I really do. A lot of times I'll just say what's on my mind and hope that it goes over well. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, but I'm comfortable in my own skin to live with the results, right? As long as I know I'm not being disrespectful, I'm not being rude and nasty and just ugly towards someone else, then I'm okay with living with the results of whatever I got on my mind. And, I'm sure that some people didn't appreciate Tuesday's show, and that's okay. The one thing that I thought was really positive is I got a lot of good feedback. I didn't get any negative feedback. So if someone didn't appreciate the show, at least they didn't say anything. That I think is a very positive step. Everything that I say is not going to be for everybody, but I don't always have to hear the negative feedback, especially when it comes to something like this, a young man's life. I'm just glad that we got none of the negative feedback. I saw plenty on Twitter, but we all know how I feel about Twitter, and we all know that there's someone that just wants to be seen on Twitter as well. So I don't really take that too much to mean a whole lot. So thank you so much, Iowa Raider. Appreciate hearing from you. And we'll wrap things up with a text from East LA Raider. It says, Q, thanks for today's podcast regarding Buffalo safety Damar Hamlin. It's time like this that we should want safety on all levels of sports, and we should all be praying for him and his family. People disgust me on how games should have been played because they needed Josh Allen to score for their fantasy football championships, or Chase, or Burrows. We all need to look at ourselves and wonder if we thinking correctly. So today, with your podcast going off topic of Raiders, I applaud your spirit. Raider Nation for life, East LA Raider. And I saw some of that as well. Hey, that guy cost me a fantasy football championship. Man, fantasy football be damned, right? I mean, football be damned, right? We're talking about life and death. We're talking about a man's life. So that's what really matters. And, I do appreciate all the great feedback for the show. I also appreciate the fact that so many people have contributed to Damar Hamlin and his GoFundMe, his Christmas toy drive that he has. He set out on his GoFundMe. He set out to raise $2,500. He does it every single year for toy drive for, less fortunate for Christmas. $2,500 was the goal. He's over $6 million right now, that GoFundMe. That means a lot of people have reached into their pockets. Professional athletes have reached into their bank accounts. Professional teams have reached into their accounts to reach out to Damar Hamlin and contribute to his GoFundMe. I thought that was awesome. If you're on Twitter, I tweeted it out at your boy Q254. You can check me out on Twitter, and you can see a link to it if you decide that you want to be part of that. But my man's over $6 million, and he set out for $2,500. So hopefully, if and when he's able to awake and see what's going on and see the love and support that he's receiving around him and his family is receiving, that'll be something that warms his heart. So I think that was really important, and I did appreciate seeing that. So that's all I got for you for today's show. Tomorrow, we will have the crossover edition. We'll be talking Chiefs and Raiders. We'll be talking storylines. We'll be talking about the biggest matchups. We'll be talking about the game flow for the Week 18 game that, as of right now, is scheduled for Saturday at 1:30 at Allegiant Stadium. So until then, Raider Nation, as I say all the time, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family, keep Damar and his family in your prayers. And matter of fact, tell Damar, just win, baby. Come on, wake up, come on home.